The joints in the rudder can be simulated with pencil lines, using the steps at the rear of the rudder as a guide. Mark both sides of the rudder with matching lines. Now mark the position for the hinges using the dimensions on page 289 of this stage. Using a razor saw, saw the 2mm line as a guide to the correct depth and make 2mm deep saw cuts at the end of each hinge recess. Using a craft knife, carefully remove the wood to make the 2mm deep recesses. Now sand the radius on the front of the rudder to produce a profile. Also sand off the pencil guideline that you did earlier. Draw a pencil line 11mm from the stern post, then mark the two lines at an angle to form the triangle. Carefully remove the wood to make a triangle opening using a fresh blade in your craft knife, and remove the wood in small pieces rather than trying to cut it all out in one go. Now paint the visible parts of the formers black to disguise them. Prepare the 6 pintles that are attached to the rudder by bending the strips of brass supplied until they are a good fit over the rudder, then add the hinge pins, carefully following the steps 1 to 7 on page 291. Next, make the hinge pins by cutting 6 lengths of brass wire. Each one needs to be 6mm long, so cut a little oversize and neaten the ends with a file. Glue one hinge pin into the centre of each hinge using superglue or quick setting epoxy resin. Ensure that the pins are at the right angles to the strips. Try the pin tools in position. Make sure they do not overhang the rear edge of the rudder and check that the hinge pins fit in the recess cut in steps 3 and 4. Apply a little epoxy to the inside of each hinge pin to reinforce it, and then pin the straps of the hinges to the rudder. Hold the rudder in place and pencil the position of the hinges to be fitted to the stern post of your model. Now take 6 more hinge strips and carefully bend them so they match the shape of the hull in line with the positions marked. Slide the hinges under the hinge pins, keeping them in order while making sure that the right way up. Now put the rudder in place and secure the hinges with the nails. You should not need to use glue, as the pins are sufficient to hold the rudder on their own. Now drill a 0.7mm hole in the rudder and fit the eye bolt with a superglue as shown, ensuring that the eye is horizontal. Take one of the ladder sides and hold it through the hole in the grating so that the bottom sits on the deck below and the grooves for the treads are level. Now make a pencil mark in line with the top of the grating. Cut the sides to length, then cut a second side to match, but before cutting the wood make sure you have a left and right pair and that the lengths are exactly the same length. Now cut a flat on the tops of the ladder sides as shown, about 3mm long and square to the slots of the treads. Take the 2 sides and 2 treads and glue them together. Make sure they are square and flat. Allow them to dry thoroughly before continuing. Now slide and glue the remaining treads into the slots. You may have to sand the treads a little until you get a sliding fit. Ensure the ladder is the right way round, with the flats cut in step 3 at the top. Apply glue to the bottom of the ladder and the flats and glue it into place. Drill 4 holes 0.7mm in diameter beside each ladder at the arrowed points in step 9 of your instructions. The hole should be 2mm deep, so place a piece of masking tape on your drill bit to act as a depth guide. Insert one of the long brass eye bolts supplied into each hole, but do not glue them at this stage. Keep the excess eye bolts for later use. Insert the brown thread through an eye, fold a short length back on itself and glue it to represent a splice, then thread it through the other 3 eyes. Finally cut the thread to length, leaving just enough excess to glue back on itself to make the splice. Then glue the eye bolts in place with super glue. Take the bits you constructed in stage 47 and drill a 0.7mm diameter hole, about 6 or 7mm deep in the bottom of each leg of the bits. Make sure the hole is central and straight. Position the bits as shown in the next step and use the points of the pins to mark the deck. Drill a 0.7mm holes where marked. Do not try to push the nails into the deck without drilling the holes first. Glue the bits in place using super glue.